Well, it's not quite the end of August, and here in New England, our elderberries are fully ripe, so it's time for us to get them off this bush, get them processed so that we can make an elderberry tincture. We have a couple of these bushes here on our property, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take these, cut them off, put them in a bowl, and then process them. But I wanted to take a second to say that the birds absolutely love elderberries when they're ripe. Now, we had these covered with some cicada netting, and even with that, the birds were able to get onto some of these, especially the ones that were near the top, and really eat the berries off. So now that the majority are all nice and ripe, we're gonna come out, save them from the birds, and get these cut off. So I'm gonna get these cut in a bowl, and I'll meet you back in the house. Now that we have these all cut off the bushes and in our bowls, we were able to get 2 decent sized bowls from what the birds didn't take. And the first thing I wanted to do, we have done videos on how to steam juice elderberries and can that, and also how to make elderberry syrup. But we get questions on what parts of the elderberry plant are edible and what parts aren't. So I want to cover that really quick for you. So the edible parts of the plant are going to be the elderflower, which you would get in the spring, and the ripe berries that are a dark purple to black color. The parts that are not edible is because they have toxins called cyanogenic glycosides that can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. Definitely don't want to ingest anything that's going to cause that. So those parts are going to be your leaves, the roots of the plant, the stems, the bark, and any berries that aren't fully ripe. So if you have any berries, like I've got a few here that are green or just starting to turn color, you don't want to use those. Now, to neutralize the toxins that are in the berries and the seeds, you're going to cook those. So you don't want to eat these raw either, because you won't have neutralized the toxins. So let's get these off of the stems and into a bowl, and then we'll talk about how we're going to make a tincture and how that also neutralizes those toxins. Finished getting all the elderberries off the stems and ended up with a total of 12 cups of elderberries. Now the next step is going to be to rinse these, and then we'll get some of these measured into a jar to start our tincture. Now that our elderberries have been rinsed, we're ready to take a jar, a funnel, and some vodka and make our tincture. Now, when you're making a tincture, you want to make sure that you're using 90 proof or higher drinking alcohol. You don't want to use anything that is not a consumable drinking alcohol. I'm just using a 100 proof vodka. I'm using a pint-sized jar, and I have my funnel. So I'm using fresh berries. If you were purchasing dried berries and you were going to put those in the jar, I'd say about half full. If you're using fresh berries, you want to do more than half. You want to do like 3/4. So let me shake the last of this water out, and then we're just gonna use our funnel, fill our jar up about 3/4 of the way. And I've got a lot of elderberries left, so if I wanted to, I could do more jars for a tincture, but I think what I'm going to do is take the rest of these and I'm going to make some elderberry jelly. So now that we've got our jar 3/4 full, I'm going to give that a little bit of a shake, and we're going to pour in our vodka. Now, you want to make sure that your vodka is going to cover your elderberries. You want to leave about a 1-inch headspace. That means 1 inch from the top of the jar. So let's get this poured in. Okay, now that I've got that poured in, I'm gonna go grab my debubbling stick to make sure we don't have any air gaps, and we'll talk about how this works. All right, so the reason that I'm using a debubbler is I want to make sure that there's no dry areas in this jar. So we're just going to give these a little bit of a stir. If anybody does canning, you know that that's an important part of that process as well. And it did go down a little bit with the alcohol, so I'm going to add just a little bit more of that. Now, why do we make a tincture as opposed to making a syrup like I did in my previous video, which I'll make sure that I leave a link to, how to make elderberry syrup and steam juicing it to make an elderberry that you can just take the juice and can it and put it on the shelf. A tincture, just like a syrup, is great for immune support. Tincture has great antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties, and it has a much, much longer shelf life. A tincture stored properly is going to last for several years on the shelf, where once you make your syrup, that's going to last maybe a few months in the refrigerator. So there's a big difference with that. So for this tincture, now that I have my inch head space, I've got everything covered with the alcohol, I'm just going to put a cover on it. And I'm going to put this in a cool, dark place, and I'm going to let it sit for 4 to 6 weeks. Now, every day I'm going to go in, I'm going to pick it up, I'm just going to give it a quick tilt just to make sure everything stays covered and that it is doing well in its process. Now, that 4 to 6 weeks is important because, as I mentioned before, elderberries, you don't normally consume anything elderberry unless they've been cooked. This 4 to 6 week process in the alcohol that is, like I'm using 100 proof, like a 90 proof or more alcohol, is going to do the same thing as far as taking care of those, neutralizing those toxins that are in your berries and in the seeds. So we're going to end up putting this on the shelf, like I said, for 4 to 6 weeks. When that time frame is up, I'm just going to take the jar, I'm going to strain it. You can use a strainer, you can use cheesecloth, and then I'm going to put it into smaller, dark bottles like we do with any tincture we make, and then we'll label it and know what we have on the shelf. And we'll have this for the upcoming winter. So if anybody is wanting to keep their immune support up or get sick, we'll be able to do that. So let me go put this aside, clean up my mess, and then we'll talk about dosage. Now to talk a little bit about dosage and taste. So with this, if you really don't like the medicinal taste, when you're making something like this, you can add, say, cinnamon stick or sliced ginger to it to improve the flavor, but it definitely is more medicinal flavored than your sweetened syrup is going to be. Your dosage is going to be different as well. With the tincture, your dosage is only going to be half a teaspoon to a teaspoon a day, one time a day, if you're using it for immune support. Now, if you're not feeling well and you're using it to treat the fact that you've got a cold, you can boost that dosage to twice a day, but it's still going to be a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon, at most twice a day. Now, this is going to last on the shelf. We're going to be able to, once this is done and our 4 to 6 weeks has gone by, I'm going to take and strain the berries out of the alcohol. I'm going to transfer this into a dark amber jar, and I'll put this in with the rest of our medicinal tinctures that we make. And this is going to last on the shelf, as long as it's stored properly, for a few years, as opposed to your syrup, which is only going to last maybe a few months kept in the refrigerator after you make it. Now, we keep both the tincture, we make syrup when we're not feeling well, but we also keep just the elderberry juice itself on the shelf as well. That way, if we are feeling the need to make an elderberry syrup, I have canned elderberry juice that I can take off the pantry shelf, make my syrup, and I can it in my half-pint jars. So I'm making a smaller amount that I could put in the fridge and have it if somebody isn't feeling well. Now, beyond that, as I said, I've done another video on making elderberry syrup, steam juicing elderberries to have elderberry juice and canning it. And I'll make sure that I leave a link to that in the description as well. So if you have any questions on that video or the process we've done today, make sure you leave it in the comments for us. If you use elderberries in other ways, let us know. I didn't use all the elderberries that we harvested, so I'm going to take the rest of those elderberries and I'm going to make some elderberry jelly. And we'll have that to add to our pantry shelf as well. So if you have a favorite elderberry recipe, whether you use the flowers or the berries, please make sure you comment and let the rest of the community know. If you think you know somebody else who might like this video, share it with your friends, give a like, subscribe, and until next time, everybody, take care.